Yeah, that may be.
So you're going to need to repeat your, oh, that's you
Oh, that's Ian. Yeah.
as as our attendee as well.
Yeah, and I just left, so I won't get no feedback. Okay,
Perfect.
so you don't see the public comment. Public comment is closed.
There are no hands.
Okay. All right, let's go to the first item. Consider adopting of the minutes from February 11, 2026. What is the will of the group?
I move adoption.
Second.
Okay, no public comment. All those in favor use the record sign of voting, which is aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any noes? Abstentions? Ayes have it. Motion carried. Item number 2, report from the Ferguson Group on federal legislative and regulatory activities. Dave, I have you introduce the conversation.
Yes, and Roger, would you like me to put up on the screen either of your documents?
Yeah, that'd be great. If you can bring up the PowerPoint, that'd be wonderful.
Will do.
Always have an issue with Zoom doing that, so that's great.
And let me pull it over here. Works for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, good morning. This is it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. This is our second quarterly federal legislative update report for 2026, covering the period since our February update. And we have a lot of ground to cover, so I'll handle the first half, and then Chris Cummins is going to walk through some of the legislative efforts, give you an update on More Water and Water Resource Development Act, the legislative tracker, and then Chris Kearney's going to walk you through some of the agency updates and PFAS opportunities and risks that are out there that we're tracking. If you can go to slide 2, I guess is the So in terms of key priorities, here are the 8 items we're tracking for the district this quarter. The headline story is kind of a mixed one. On the funding side, the core work plan for FY26, which came out earlier this year, did not include the district's stormwater request. And as you'll recall, we had requested that through the Corps of Engineers as an environmental infrastructure project. And we were competing through the agency's work plan process, but again, no funds were included for that. On the other hand, the Water Smart funding came back strong through the House bill for FY27. And actually, I skipped over the FY27 Seaside earmark was also not submitted by Panetta, Padilla, or Schiff. Basically, what we found is the request this year, and as you'll recall, Representative Panetta was limited to 20 requests for his entire district. The House members or the Senate members were also a bit more constrained or restrained in the number of projects they requested this year, and the emphasis was certainly on both the House and Senate side was on the projects that are shovel ready for construction and construction focused projects. But in any case, those were not the Seaside well monitoring project was not included on either the House or the Senate side. And again,
Roger,
on the other, yeah.
Roger, take a pause. Just let me explain this to my board members a little bit. So the EI, environmental infrastructure, was a request under the 2 senators passed it through in their earmark requests a year ago, but Panetta did not. And when the House and the Senate came together to get a bill together, it did not make it through. All the others that did in California then became part of the Army Corps work plan. We decided not to resubmit it for the 3rd year in a row this year, and instead we submitted a program to start rehabbing and replacing the Seaside Basin monitoring wells. And that would have been off an EPA-funded program. And that's what the FY 2027 earmark was. But that one didn't even make the list for either of our senators or Congressman Panetta.
Correct. And so it's, with that, we still think, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but it's, we think there are certainly opportunities for both, but we're following up with all three offices on the well monitoring project and the stormwater project and other priorities for the district and we'll be doing that in the coming weeks and well ahead of and thinking ahead to the FY 28 process and making certain that we're in good position there to focus on, to put forward a project that'll be a priority for the three offices. Just in general, there are programmatic dollars also available through this process, through the appropriations process, and we've seen some improvement in things in terms of Water Smart, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And again, we'll talk a little bit about Chris will be giving you an update on the More Water Act, Water Resource Development Act, and other legislation that we'll be focusing on here in a minute. You can just go to the next slide. In terms of a little bit more deeper, again, as Dave was just saying, in terms of the work plan process for FY 26, it was the earmark request of the district for $750,000 was put forward, as he said, from both senators. It was not included in the final bill, and so we were in a position where we still could get funded through the project because there was about $20 million in additional funding that was available nationwide that could be allocated, and so or excuse me, 14.13 nation, pardon me, 14.13 million that was allocated available nationwide for environmental infrastructure projects. And so at that, we were hoping that some of those dollars could go just to get this project started, the stormwater project started, but we've had good support out of the San Francisco district office, but it did not make it. There were 8 projects that were funded, several of those in the work plan. Those include projects that were actually set aside through the earmark process, as well as a few that did receive a fraction of that 14.13 million. On the 2027 process, which
Roger, can we go back
Sure.
one slide? I just had a question.
Sure.
The PFAS question. What does it mean halfway through the sentence? Rescinding 4 other limits. What does that mean?
So Chris Kearney is going to talk a little bit more about that, but go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, there was a second tier. There were two primary types of PFAS, PFOA and PFAS, that the Biden administration had finalized rules, one related to safe drinking water, which we'll talk about, one related to designation of as hazardous under Superfund. There was a second cluster that they were pushing through the system for regulation at a second tier level of regulation that hadn't quite been finalized yet at the most significant stringent regulation. This proposes, the Trump administration asserts that they put forward that second tier in a way administratively and procedurally was incorrect and improper, and they want to sort of have a do-over, and they're asking the public to comment on whether they agree with the administration. There's a little bit more behind it, but that's essentially what they're talking about here. Is they believe that it was done administratively incorrectly, and they're pursuing a means to revive it and pull it back, utilizing administrative imprecision as the basis.
Okay, thank you. I just thought they were changing the rules. They were just changing the procedure.
Yeah, so that's how it's a variation on that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So for FY 27, again, as we said earlier, the focus from both Padilla and Senator Schiff, as well as from Representative Panetta, was focused primarily on projects that were construction projects and projects that were shovel ready. We're also there in terms of Representative Panetta, there was a shift sort of in his general focus for his 20 projects towards parks and accessibility and public safety as well. But we still think, again, there are opportunities for funding in the near term, and those for this project, for the well monitoring project, and that really is focused on some competitive grant opportunities. And we do believe it's in a position, we certainly should be in position to pursue funding in FY28 as well. And we're working with the delegation on that going forward. Next slide. In terms of the groundwater strategy and a priority, and again, the seaside monitoring wells, there is a growing effort to look in interest in a number of folks here in Congress to explore opportunities to expand federal assistance for non-federal groundwater investments. And this would be things to support district priorities like ASR and certainly monitoring as part of well monitoring, preserving your existing groundwater resources it would be a priority for that as well. And we'll be working to address position the district to engage on that, continue to engage on this issue going forward. On the seaside monitoring well project, again, as I said before, there is a near-term opportunity in terms of competitive grants. Some folks within our grant staff have been in touch with, in communication with Mike, and exploring some of these opportunities, identifying priorities that will work for this project, and as well as looking at other opportunities, other priorities of the district as well, where competitive grants can be made available to help support your priorities. And then in terms of the next slide, in terms of Water Smart, just again, before we do think that this is an area where there has been some progress, and the district did engage on this earlier in the year, joining a number of other water interests nationwide, westwide, in advocating for Water Smart funding. And over the last several years, there's been a reduction in the amount of funding that's been available for Water Smart, and through the appropriations process, at least we saw a decline in FY26. Again, it went down to $42 million, and historically the funding has been in the range of 90 or thereabouts $1 million for Water Smart. So this was a significant decline. This year for FY27, because of the efforts of the district and others, there has been the House has proposed a significant increase from what the administration proposed, and what was approved for FY26. And the administration had proposed zero funding for Water Smart in FY26. And so the House has approved, is recommending in their bill, at least the bill that will go to the floor of the House, recommending $83 million. There's still a deficit in the amount of money that's available for general Water Smart grants, the Water and Energy Efficiency Grant Program, WEEG program, which is one that historically has been a significant source of funding for water efficiency improvements westwide, and certainly is the primary source of funding on the Water Smart program for things like ASR and the aquifer storage and recovery effort. And that still is underfunded relative to what it should be and historically has been. The House did put additional resources into drought funding, generally is what they're calling it, and just a category of drought response efforts. And so as the Senate deals with this, we will be tracking that and certainly working to make certain that those dollars can be used in a ways that will be available to support the kinds of projects that the district has prioritized. There is some significant positive report language that's been included that's indicating broad House bipartisan support for Water Smart, and so we're certainly encouraged by that. And again, that's definitely a response to the very broad expression of support for Water Smart, which the district participated in. With that,
Mike's already made some inquiries as to whether we can tuck what's called CalVal. It's a statewide effort to kind of develop a consistent set of scientific rules to apply to advanced water purification projects. And it's kind of an industry group that's working in concert with all the water reuse participants in California. So Mike's taking a look to see if we can't find some funding for that effort through Water Smart.
You can go to the next slide. Or go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yep, it kind of froze it looks like.
Just have a quick question on the very last bullet on this slide about irrigation measures. I know it may not apply a lot directly within our district, but so can you say more about what that would fund?
Yeah, just any sort of anything that will improve the efficiency with which water can be used is eligible for these funds. So precision irrigation versus flood irrigation or something of that sort, any systems that are required to support that, that's the kind of thing that can be funded through the Water Smart program. And this is an area that is available under the statute. And what we're just highlighting here is that the committee itself highlighted that in report language as something that the administration should prioritize going forward. So anything that would help modernize the facilities that distribute water and therefore in a way that makes it more efficient, then that's something that they want to support.
Yeah, and it may be tough for us because the Colorado River Basin is already pleading drought, and the Central Valley is beginning to look like it's going to be a down year. So there's going to be a lot of pencil sharpening in these kind of drought-stricken areas.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's money there that could be used in Salinas Valley for improving the efficiency of irrigation.
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not up to us, I realize.
And we'll turn it over to Chris Cummins now.
Well, thank you.
Tracker.
Great. Hope everyone's doing well. Just covering a couple of different legislative items that we're tracking for the district. As you can see here are some highlighted, more high-level bills that have made some progress in some respects in committee markups and hearings. And I'll highlight a few. The Fish Act, it's a bill from Rep. Calvert, which aims to consolidate the management regulation of the Endangered Species Act. So this would have an impact on anadromous fish within the Fish and Wildlife Service. And currently the split between the National Marine Fisheries Service and Fish and Wildlife has its different issues and problems. The main thing is the application of how the two services operate. It would move jurisdiction from two agencies down to one, and that would certainly help with some concerns that the district may have. The next bill I want to highlight is the Every Drop Counts Act. There was a hearing last November, which we covered in our last update, and that bill would look to modify small storage programs and increase the size cap for groundwater recharge projects. It would grow the capacity and storage from a range of 200 to 150,000 acres that carry that capacity on an annual basis, and allow and provide additional eligibility for groundwater projects to receive and apply for new funding focused on recharge and depleted aquifers. If we go to the next slide, we'll spend time on.
Could I
Yes.
ask a quick question, Chris? I noticed in the tracker, there's quite a few California Democratic House members on some of these bills, but Panetta is not on any of them. I was wondering about the reason for that. Is that have to do with what committees they're on, or some other explanation? Do you know?
A lot of times, members will hear from different counterparts and even staff within a given bill. Some offices have different protocols with respect to signing on to a bill. We're certainly willing and able to go back to the congressman and reach out and flag these bills as priorities for his staff to review and for him to potentially sign on as a co-sponsor. So we can take that on and make sure that especially some of these higher level bills are a priority for him as well, and he can help support them as they matriculate through the congressional cycle.
Well, that would be a good thing. I mean, they clearly some of those bills have bipartisan support, and so I don't see why he wouldn't support some of them.
And we have asked from time to time if it's something that is directly of interest to us.
Yeah, and I would say, just as an aside, there's as many as 10 to 15,000 bills in the House, and members will have a smattering come across their desk. They'll choose to or not to support. But certainly these are bills that the congressman and his staff have spoken to in other ways in supporting, and we can definitely make sure that they sign on. We flag it for them for potential co-sponsorship.
Thank you. Thank you. Good.
Absolutely. So we'll spend a little bit more time on the More Water Act. The long name, for those who keep in tally, is the Making Our Communities Resilient Through Enhancing Water for Agriculture, Technology, the Environment, and Residents Act. So this bill is slated to get a markup after being introduced by Senator Padilla earlier this year. The Committee on Energy and Natural Resources is aiming for a tentative June markup of the bill. And the core of this bill would be the amendment of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act portion of the large-scale water recycling and reuse program. And it would establish a new water conveyance improvement program. So the thing of most consequence for the district is the water recycling piece of it. So that first bubble, and there's four different pockets here that are of considerable impact for the district. But I want to point your attention to the large scale recycling. It would reauthorize through 2031 with $450 million in funding, and that would allow for the district to continue on the track record that it's already had in completing projects to seek after additional funding for future phases of projects on the water recycling side of the house. The conveyance piece of this would allow for an authorization of a new federal program, giving grants up to 50% of the project cost, of federal match, and authorizing 500 million over the course of 5 years. In addition to that, it would also reauthorize the WIN Act, the WIN recycling reauthorization, and that would provide additional funds and raise the cap to 50 million, up from the 30 million that it was recently held at. So if we go to the next slide, we'll close out with just some updates on where the WRDA process is. So the district submitted to both senators and to Congressman Panetta a project that would assist with language that would assist with reimbursement authority, allowing for an increased flow of funding to non-federal sponsors. So the pot of funds within WRDA are often small within the Section 219 reimbursement amounts. So growing that pot would allow for the district to receive funding in WRDA cycles to receive, additional reimbursements under the Section 219 authority. The current status of that is both the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works are in review in the drafting stages of their bills, and we can expect a June markup of the House T&I bill, and then the Senate will follow with their July markup. This process has been largely bipartisan and one that we expect to continue. We expect for both Senators Padilla and Schiff to weigh in heavily, and the congressman as well, and that conference will probably end sometime in the fall of 2026. In conjunction with that is the WIFIA loan repayment extension. At TFG, we've worked with Senator Padilla's team to include language in a markup for that. And this the main change there would be an extension of the program's timing from 35 years to 55 years. And that would obviously give more opportunities to be more fluid with the loan structures and the way financing is done for these larger projects. If no questions, I'll pass it to Chris.
Yeah, before you're going to Chris Kearney, let me say the other thing on the WIFIA loan payment extension, that the extending it out to 55 years basically reduces annual debt service by about 16% relative to 35 years. So it's significant, and it's based on 55 years or the useful life of the project, whichever is less. So if you've got a project, again, it's more than 55, which most of our water infrastructure is going to have a useful life in excess of that.
Roger, can we focus on the third bullet?
Sure.
Limited to new loans. So our first principal payment is due this coming year. But we've been taking down money, for 5 years at this point, 4 years. So we're out of the applicable group because it's not a new loan.
Right. It's from the date of substantial completion of the project. So if you started, repayment, usually, and that's your repayment is triggered even if you close on the loan earlier. Normally, the way the language is currently written anyway, it's 3 years following substantial completion of the project, as opposed to when you close the loan. So in theory,
can you send us the language?
Sure, 100%. It'll do that, and it's because and the only reason that they are trying to put some parameters around it, and this is still in draft, so we could certainly let Padilla's office know about any concerns you have about this particular drafting of it, is that they're trying to give some guidance to CBO and joint tax, which are the ones that actually score the bill, because this will score a little bit, and they're trying to keep the scoring down. But 100%, I'll send you the language. And this is, and again, another thing I would just say that back to, this question about Senator Representative Panetta and his interest. This is an area, WIFI has been an area that he's been very supportive of in the past. And certainly that, along with the small scale storage projects that will support groundwater, we'll absolutely go back to him on and update his office on these developments here, and to seek their support, co-sponsorship of legislation as it emerges as well.
Is John Watts working on this?
He is, yes. We're working with him on that.
Okay. So
it's also that it's bipartisan. There is they're working with Senator Kramer's office as well. So this whole area is getting some bipartisan support.
No, it'll be worth it for us working with Monterey One Water to at least look at the language, because if we could, we're still within 3 years of substantial completion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Interesting. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Chris, we can go to the next slide there.
Yeah, on this one. So, excuse me. So on the sorry, on the EPA work in particular, the thing I would draw attention to is there's a number of funding activities that that the agency has announced related to infrastructure funding that I think would be of potential interest to us. The sewage overflow funding money that would be available, the rural tribal perhaps as well, but in particular, they're also doing. Not reflected on here, but in the subset there of the 8 billion, there's $1 billion that's been released. It's the last tranche of the 5 billion under the infrastructure bill for environmental contaminants, and it's really intended. It goes to the states, but it's also intended to go down to make its way down to water use systems like ours for addressing things related to PFAS and so on. So that'll be certainly one to watch, and then the sewage overflow funding as well is of particular note. On the regulatory front, the administration announced, in addition to that funding on the contaminants, two rulemakings that are of interest and have been somewhat long in coming. The Biden administration, as you may recall, on the safe drinking water side, promulgated a couple of regulations in 2024. One set a 4 parts per trillion standard under the Safe Drinking Water Act for maximum contaminant levels of PFAS and PFOA, which is the most common types of PFAS that stems from firefighting foam and the like. That standard by a lot of water systems, including in California and elsewhere, is believed to be incredibly stringent, borderline not enforceable. EPA is somewhat bound by the Clean Water Act that says essentially if the technology exists to do something, you have to set a standard that's commensurate with that technology standard. And while 4 parts per trillion is widely recognized as not particularly practically and affordably one that you can measure and clean. One water manager equated it to a speck in across 20 swimming pools. Nonetheless, the technical aspect of that made it very difficult for EPA to make modifications to that standard. So what they've done is they've extended by a little over 2 years the deadline by which water systems have to have equipment in place and be ready to track it and to treat the water. I think there'll be more discussions about that. There's litigation that a number of national water systems and others are in with EPA right now. So this, I think, is in part a way to sort of kick the can down the road, both from a technical standpoint and to let some of that litigation sort of play out. The second, though, is there was a second tier, as I mentioned earlier, a second sort of cluster of PFAS that the administration very much wanted to declare under Superfund, but they really weren't able. There wasn't enough evidence, enough scientific basis. So they did set maximum contaminant levels for 4 other sets of PFAS under the Safe Drinking Water Act. The administration signaled pretty early on that they believed that that was going too far under the act, certainly procedurally, that they did not believe that the administration had pursued that correctly, that they had in fact made a determination that it was a contaminant that should be regulated, and then they set the standards together. So they believe there's a sort of a technicality there. I think the truth is the administration wants to see them not be regulated, and so they're using this as a procedurally to propose to rescind that regulation, not necessarily to not regulate it in the future. They could regulate it under other environmental laws, the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, for example, which is what the states have suggested this particular basket of contaminants should be regulated under, that it should be under what's known as the RCRA law, not under safe drinking water. So the administration is taking comments through July 20th on the procedural question to rescind these the rulemaking that set these contaminants and then essentially start the process over with. And that's pretty much where we are. I think that is probably realistic, reasonable. There are different folks on different sides of the issue as to whether that's the case or not, but that is the latest 2 actions that EPA has touched on with respect to that.
And I think either way, the water industry is in fear of it because even under RCRA, it's a cradle to grave obligation. So
yeah, Yeah, you'd still have to spend money. It still has to be especially handled, taken to a landfill or what have you. But ECOS, the Environmental Council of States, which is kind of the coalition of the 50 EPA administrators at the state level, have long argued that that basket should be under RCRA for what that's worth. So there's at least a state perspective that's at a lower level. And I think that's where we're going to go. We may not see a new regulation before this administration's finished, which is probably part of what some folks are counting on.
Yeah, for our industry directors, it's on both the water and the wastewater side. So if you're doing advanced recycled water, which we are, you inherit the PFAS. It's not like we went out and generated it. And so under the cradle to grave philosophy, you now have an obligation because you've basically taken it in under your wing. And so if it becomes an obligation, it's unclear what we would do or what Monterey One Water would do. On the drinking water side, there's a couple of CalAm wells in the Paso Robles aquifer, so the shallow aquifer, that they've had detects. So we might inherit those if the acquisition goes through. So it's something to look at.
And the one thing to be aware of, David, I'm sure you know this, but for the director's benefit, that circumstance that Dave just outlined is widely has coined a phrase, and it's known as passive receivers. The notion that the contaminant got into the wastewater system, now potentially becomes a Superfund site, and by extension, the water utility is potentially a responsible party in that circumstance. So there's much discussion still in Congress about whether or not there's a way to address that issue. The Biden administration sort of took somewhat of a hands-off about that. They said essentially that they couldn't, the law was the law, so they would basically promise not to enforce essentially. And they put out a document that essentially said we won't come after wastewater facilities if this sort of thing happens. But obviously that's quite limited. And so this administration has also agreed with the Biden administration that it is the province of Congress to address the issue. So this administration's been a little bit more forthcoming and forceful in their support for a legislative fix to the so-called passive receiver issue, give some exemption or sort of a carve out, if you will, for folks like us who have this come into contamination into our system through no fault of our own. There actually is some bipartisan support for that. There's lots of conversation about it. The challenge, of course, is the legislative calendar and some of the push and pull from various interests that have kind of kept that stood off. But it is a recognized challenge in Congress. It is a recognized challenge by the last two administrations. It's just the challenge that is the Superfund law and opening that up and all the sort of ramifications for that. So there are ongoing conversations about what to do about that at this point.
Dave, I have a question about we inherit the problem. What's the source water that has evidence that we inherit a problem? What's the source water for that?
Yeah, so I think it's the not the Plumas well, the La Playa well, but it's one of the northern seaside CalAm wells. And I suspect it's probably a result of firefighter training with foam retardants at the old Fort Ord. Because, the northernmost wells are the closest to the old public works area of the Presidio. So that's a possible likely source. But yeah, they've had detections at least one well in the very northern regime of Seaside.
And when they make a detection like this, is it a continuous thing, like every 6 months it shows up, or is it sporadic?
It's been sporadic, but once you see it once,
okay,
you start looking for it more frequently.
You can't unring the bell, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But you can, if you remember, we helped remediate the airport's problem, and they had trichloroethylene, TCE, issues and a lot of paint spills and things back when the airport was running in war mode in the 40s and 50s. And so you can treat contaminated groundwater. You just basically pump it out, run it through a treatment system, and then pump it back in and take the ick and go landfill it. So eventually you can get to a clean state with groundwater. So it's not the end of the world, but
it's expensive.
Yeah, and if you read any of the guest opinions or editorials, CalAm made an allusion to the uncertainty of some of their production wells. Again, it's a shallow Paso Robles well, and most of the water that they're taking these days is from deeper Santa Margarita strata, so the Peralta well and originally our ASR well number 1 and 2 are deeper wells. So I don't think it's a huge problem. And I think at the end of the day, you could probably just destroy the well if you had to, but it's out there as an issue.
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately.
So in the interest of time, there's one point I was going to highlight on the agency funding, and Roger, if you had other comments you wanted to join in to highlight that I missed. I think the one thing to draw attention to is the Bureau of Reclamation funding, both in terms of what the Appropriations Committee did last year and what they're doing again this year. This is really a textbook case of where the administration, to make their books look good, zero out a number of programs, Title 16, I think, and other parts of WaterSmart, knowing that the congressional folks will demonstrably restore that. They also did on something, not rural water projects, which also is under reclamation. They did the same sort of thing. So this is a case where, just like I think last year, you'll see in the water funding throughout reclamation, the core in the course of it, that there really is not. There's not, unlike certain programs elsewhere in the government, this is not a place where the administration, draws a hard line and threatens a veto and the like. It's more of a classic example going back to, at least the Clinton administration, if not before, of an administration proposing zero to a politically popular program, knowing full well that it will be fully funded and then some, and signing those bills ultimately. And I think that'll continue again this year throughout the process with the reclamation funding. And certainly the Senate will be as good or more generous. And then we'll end up in a pretty good spot when we're done.
I'm shocked that they would posture that way.
What's the Applied Science Open for Seaside? What is that?
Roger?
That's a competitive grant program. So that's it's under WaterSmart, but it's a subset of WaterSmart. So there's some dollars that are available there that the grants team is looking at and talking to Mike about, and as a potential source of funding for the monitoring project. The well monitoring project. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay.
Anything on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, Roger, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I'll just highlight one thing, and again, in the interest of time. That's the last bullet on the opportunity side. We haven't talked about this, but there are discussions underway, and you may have heard about Congress considering a third reconciliation package. And so that's basically an alternative way of doing a supplemental appropriations bill. Bottom line is, Department of Defense needs additional resources because of what's going on in Iran. They're going to run out of money in mid-August, and is what the current projection is. And so some dollars are going to have to be made available one way or the other. The reconciliation process, as a reminder, what that allows Congress to do is pass a bill with only 50 by a simple majority. There is no 60 vote rule on the Senate side for reconciliation. So there is thought that what they will do is potentially, because if they do a supplemental appropriations bill, that has to be done on a bipartisan basis. And what's been happening with the supplemental appropriations bill, or the FY 26 funding for Homeland Security, and the reconciliation process that's underway right now is focused on Homeland Security, and that's been stalled right now. And so the thought is that that's likely to continue, that the challenges there, and in terms of getting a bipartisan group together on that. And so or even getting that through the simple majority process. So they're talking about a third reconciliation package and what that means for you is that there are discussions already underway to look for that vehicle, use that vehicle to secure additional resources for drought response. And again, Dave alluded to it earlier. Colorado River system is under extreme stress. Much of the West is under extreme stress. And if that goes forward, if this third reconciliation process goes forward, that's certainly a place where we're going to be there'll be an opportunity to secure additional resources to support the kinds of projects, priorities that you have. Again, additional resources for Water Smart, ASR, different things of that sort to help maximize the benefit, the value of your groundwater basins and things of that sort. And water reuse could certainly be.
Could we go back to that just
as
one?
well?
I'm sorry, going back to it, and I'm sorry, I just want to build on that real quick. Just two quick things to make a point on. One, on this midterm election dynamics compressing the calendar, I really think, and I've talked to a number of folks who think this as well, and it plays right directly to reconciliation or potentially a year-end package involving drought. I think most folks have conceded that because of the election, that things may start to slow here before the too long, whether that's Memorial, whether that's 4th of July or more sort of Labor Day-ish. But I think there's a recognition potentially if there are changes that we really are looking at a calendar of 12 months, that there really will be action after session, especially if one of those chambers, flips to the Democrats. There'll be hasty activity by the House folks to do that. The other thing is, and permitting reform is a perfect example of this, there are a handful of bills that are of sort of significant or monumental proportion: the highway bill, another WRDA bill, permitting reform, which enjoys, despite the rhetoric, a lot of bipartisan support on both sides of the aisle in both chambers, and there's a lot of work being spent time trying to do this. And so I think it would be a mistake to assume that the political dynamics mean, they're going to throw in the towel in July or whatever and sort of be done for the year. I think obviously attendance always becomes a problem as you get later into the year, but I think we're assuming there'll be plenty of activity up through December. Obviously, you never know exactly how these things play out, but there's a lot of sort of big legislation that frankly folks are going to want to get cleared off the decks before next year. So I think there's more to come, and we may have a very busy holiday season depending on how the election, even if almost regardless of how the election turns out.
I have a question about the impact of the Iran war. Will water projects be competing for money for military costs?
No, not really. It's just that because the way that Congress looks at it from a budget standpoint is they're looking at defense discretionary spending, which is the money that is needed to support the Iran war. And then they're looking at domestic discretionary spending, separate and apart, caps on that, in general anyway. I mean, it does end up squeezing things, from a global standpoint, but there's not direct pressure or direct direct impact because of the need for additional resources on the
I wasn't
side.
thinking of it direct, but pressure to reduce all kinds of spending on the non-military side of things.
I think globally, absolutely. I mean, it's because it's still the case that there are lots of folks on the Hill that are on both sides of the aisle that are interested and concerned about the growth in the deficit. When you deal with these in a reconciliation process, the spending, it basically gets taken off budget. If they did it as a supplemental, it'll basically be taken off budget as well. So either way, doesn't officially interfere with or count against the caps that would be put in place for FY27, but overall it creates, additional pressure on the budget. It adds to the deficit clearly, and that's a concern again to members on both sides of the aisle.
Well, it should be.
Right.
Okay,
and we'll just stop because I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. This is a summary really of what we've talked about here, all those different things that we'll be working on going forward.
Great. Thank you, Roger and team.
Yeah,
hey, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next, Dave?
We would move to the next agenda item, which would be JEA.
Is John on?
He is.
I
Oh.
see him. You're muted, John.
Okay. Until he figures out his Zoom, I'll get started on this. We are halfway through the second year of a 2-year session. Basically, where the Capitol is right now is they have high priority issues with high budget concerns. It is not really about the good ideas right now. It is the ones that are probably more fiscally prudent.
Look, Lori, I'm back on.
Okay, then go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to start out by saying, David, this is probably one of the best times of the year to actually do this type of presentation, because we're at a time of the year when just a lot of pieces of the legislative puzzle are coming together, they're converging on either getting done with the legislation in some way or fashion, whether it's through appropriations or it doesn't get through one house or the other, because Friday, this week, the legislature is on both the Senate and the Assembly are on the floor, dealing with all the bills that were introduced earlier this year. So if they haven't died already in appropriations, this is where they either make it or break it, moving to the other side. For all of you, this has been a very busy year, and I think we've all been engaged here on this end between Lori and I, and your end, Dave, with you and Mike, and working with our state legislators, particularly Senator Laird, and working with Aqua and so forth on some of our priority issues. And this year, it's been a number of years since the last time we actually introduced a piece of legislation, and we have one that Lori will be going over in detail that was introduced by Senator Laird. And we got other pieces of legislation where, again, MPWMD has taken an active role in either the support or oppose. So it has been a very active year as far as state legislation goes. The budget process is well underway. We've got a June 15th deadline, for the budget to get passed and so forth. AI has really helped things out this year. We started out, with somewhat of a deficit, but the surplus continues to rise again due to AI, and that's always a fragile piece of the budget, because anything can go on. I mean, Iran had an impact on the stock market and brought it down, but it's bounced back somewhat, and so we'll see how we finish if things stay together between now and June 15th. So those activities are happening. And then you layer on that it's an election year, and there's so much going on, as we all know, with the state, from the governor's office on down, and they continue to focus and point at the legislature either not doing things, which is usually what they point of in the campaign things that you are seeing constantly on TV, whether it's a lack of housing, whether it's the homelessness issue, and other budget issues. So that is all going on, and it's kept us all very busy this first part of the year. Lori, as usual, will go into depth both in the budget and the legislation that we're tracking, and then her and I will team up after that's done and go into the initiatives that have either qualified or are likely to qualify, just to give you a taste of what's going on there. So with that, Lori, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As John said, the governor released his May revision on the 14th, which was a busy day because the Senate and the Assembly both released their suspense files. So as an advocate, I think everyone was ripping their hair out. These are not usually done, these big events not done at the same time within the same hour and overlapping each other. In regards to the budget, as John said, we are I wouldn't say surplus, but we are 16.5 billion above projections in January. Again, a lot of this is predicated on the stock market, really on the AI IPOs, as well as, all of our three tax collection uh, buckets are above projections. And so when the governor released his last May revision, he really, again, was taking a cautious tone that I think is looming on the Capitol of like, we may have money now, but we're gonna have a sizable structural deficit in the out years. And so in taking these excess funds, he unequivocally said that we have a balanced budget through 2028. After that, we're looking at a 16 to 18 billion dollar per year, but he's trying to, they're trying to cut this down. There were no new investments. The reductions were largely not cutting programs, but like in the healthcare realm for Medi-Cal, putting extra layers of redetermination of eligibility and stuff like that. So there will try to be some cost savings. In the water world, as I said, there are no new major general fund augmentation for the programs. It basically where we are, and this is a good news, we're at status quo. However, there are some programs that are very vulnerable in the out years. As I said, the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund. Some of these monies are coming from the cap and trade, and that whole deal that was renegotiated last year is not producing the revenue that the administration and the EPA really were counting on. So this is a very vulnerable program right now. Again, heavy reliance on the Prop 4 climate bond. This is, again, no new investments like why the voters passed it. This is really backfilling existing multi-year water and climate programs. The one thing I do want to point out is the Delta State Water Project. I know we don't have any skin in the game, but it is a big water issue here. They did not appropriate any money, but this is kind of uh, a top priority that Newsom wants to get done. It is very, very contentious, and from someone that lives off the Delta, a lot of people down here have very strong feelings for it, and also that this is going to be, that roughly about a $60 billion project, and that is being fiscally prudent and frugal. It's more upwards of 80 billion, and a lot of people are thinking that this is going to be high speed rail part two. So, as right now, as John said, we are in legislative House of Origin deadline, which is this Friday. And then, you have the budget subs that are pushing out their reports to the full budget committee, and that has to be done by June 15th, where the governor will have to sign it by the end of June. Are there any questions on the budget? Okay. Legislative update. And yes, we have a sponsored bill, and big thanks to Mike and Dave. This was an issue that we've talked about for, I don't know, about a year. And this is to clarify a bill that was passed in 2023, AB 1572. And basically, we were kind of kept out just by definition. We were not included the ability to enforce, against the use of potable water for irrigation for non-functional turf, located on commercial and industrial properties. And so around December, began having conversations with Senator Laird's office, and they latched onto him. They were, Quincy, the staffer, has been absolutely wonderful, and he introduced SB 1139, And at that time, we were kind of going back and forth with language with Senator Laird's office, as well as Aqua, of checking bases of not, because this was a contentious bill in 2023 and, kind of opening up Pandora's box. And Mike and Dave did a great job of reaching out to other regional water agencies that were somewhat in the same position by definition that were left out of this bill. At the end of the day, we very much narrowed this to just the MPWMD. And we were fortunate we got out of Senate Natural Resources on the consent calendar. We got out of appropriations on consent and off the floor, Senate floor on consent. We have been referred to the Assembly, Water Parks and Wildlife. There is no date for the hearing. We are still working on getting that on consent and getting this to the governor's desk and signed. Is there any questions on that?
Quick.
Yeah, and I checked this morning. There's still no committee meeting set.
Yeah. No.
Quick question. Just from layman terminology, non-functional turf, is that aesthetic turf? Is that, not parkland or not used for?
Yeah, not used for recreation, assembly, parks, schoolyards. So it would be like the turf at the bank at the corner of Munris and Soledad in Monterey, if you ever get the chance.
Well, but what this means is that aesthetics, using nature for aesthetic purposes is being diminished, right? I mean, because somehow it's not going
to. Well, yeah, the alternatives can still be very aesthetic, but it'll take an investment, and that's the hard part of this.
Okay.
So
yeah,
we're trying to get ourselves the ability to enforce. We're not sure we want to enforce.
Okay, no, I understand it. We're trying to plug a gap in the enforcement authorities. I understand that. I was just trying to get a different word for non-functional, and that's okay. I'm okay.
Do other public water districts comparable to ours have this authority?
So the authority rests with a public water system, which is a defined term at the state, a city or a county, or a city or county, or city and county, which would just be San Francisco. So we're neither a city, we're not a county, and we're not a public water system, although throughout this process, we've determined we probably are a public water system, but our local regional division of drinking water person said, well, no, you don't fit the definition the way we interpret the definition, meaning there's three ways to be a public water system. One is to serve retail water to more than 15 customers. The other is to own treatment plant to treat water on behalf of another public water system. Well, we meet that qualification. And then the third is to have storage of water on behalf of another public water system for delivery to customers. And we also do that. But Jonathan Weininger of our local division of drinking water doesn't want to give us credit for the treatment plant, even though it's analogous to 4 other public water systems, because he assigns that treatment plant to Cal-Am. Even though we own it, Cal-Am operates it. And then they have trouble. They've never done very well at defining groundwater storage as storage. They like tanks, because tanks, you can knock on a tank and you see that it's an asset, a hard asset. So anyway, if we had to go to the courts, it's highly likely we would be interpreted as a public water system, defined term.
Isn't the background on this the fact that special districts are kind of generally out of the knowledge base of those that are writing these laws? And it's
or many special districts that provide water service are public water systems. So like Marina Coast is an obvious one. But there are about 13 water wholesalers who are not public water systems. And I guess you could say the other 12 didn't care. They don't want to have enforcement authority.
Okay, well, good for you and good for Laird and good for
Yeah.
our
So
consultant.
I guess this means that if the district did try to enforce this, that it could be challenged on the basis that we allegedly don't have authority. Okay. If we didn't enforce the restriction, is there any other entity that could?
Well, CalAm itself can. What we've noticed in the state as a whole, every time we've had drought requirements, the investor-owned utilities aren't really good at using their ability to fine or penalize, don't like to.
Yeah.
So when we've had droughts before, typically it's been the district who will issue a penalty for water waste and so forth.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the district has done that in the past.
Yeah, during the 4-year drought in the teens, we issued a number of citations for anywhere from serving water without asking the customer at a restaurant to leaks, leaving a site and going down the road. Typically, it's a fix-it ticket to start. And then if there's willful disregard, it's $50, then $100, then $250. And somewhere in between the $50 and the 250 usually gets your correction. But this type of act will take larger scale administrative penalties. And what we've seen that works in Las Vegas, for example, is Nevada has its own version. It's not quite the same as California's. But if you work with the entities and try to make it a kind of a win for them as well, we're moving to greater resiliency in our landscaping, then they can declare a victory rather than a loss. But there's cost involved when you've got Bermuda grass growing and you have to rip it out and put native plants in. So, and the other challenge is how you irrigate the trees but get rid of the grass.
Yeah, we want to focus on the legislative, so let's just keep moving so we can prime up our internal discussions for board meeting.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, directors, you'll have your legislative track attached, where we basically narrowed it down. I have highlighted one bill that I wanted to kind of bring to the legislative committee's attention because regionally it's really kind of percolating and raising a little bit of ire in the Monterey Bay region. This is going to be 1548 by Assemblywoman Pellerin. Our esteemed Assembly member Don Addis is also a co-author. So what this does, it establishes the Monterey Bay Stewardship Authority, which is a JPA, with the counties of San Benito, Santa Cruz, and Monterey, and a jurisdiction throughout those regions. And the goal of this basically JPA is to raise and allocate, and this is the key, public and private funds for the purpose of restoring, enhancing protection, land conservation, and essentially stewardship on the working lands for the Monterey Bay region. It is a 9-member board. One member from each from the county board, then one from each city, and then there's a conservationist, a tribal member, etc. This has kind of gone through unscathed, kind of been raising the flag on this, that this is several, significant issues with this bill. San Benito is the only county supporting it, and why wouldn't they be? Because they're probably not going to be, they'll be the biggest benefactor of, because these are tax dollars. This authority can issue bonds and raise taxes. and that where these funds go is just determined by this 9-member board. It is not a weighted board, so where you have more revenue coming in from Santa Cruz and Monterey counties, San Benito has equal representation. A lot of the Monterey County, where I'm speaking with their advocate, is what I'm hearing is that the board is split, that their lobbyist is trying to move them to an opposed unless amended. But it's kind of funny, there's nothing really good about this bill that you could amend it that would take the concerns from the local government off. Santa Cruz County is staying off of this bill right now. However, a chunk of the cities will be most likely opposing. There was a call last Friday that was organized and initiated by the regional consultant for the League of California Cities, and had a number of the city managers on there with the consultant from Assemblymember Pellerin's office, and essentially just kind of ripped up the bill and said, hold this off, do not move this. We will be opposing. Again, the league has an opposed unless amended. It's not a position I would agree with. My understanding is that a number of the cities are going to sign on what we call NASCAR letters, that you're going to have the League of Cities um, be the header and the initiator of the position, and then have all the cities' logos on there. So this is one, again, even though just for an FYI, that this is going on regionally and it is ruffling some feathers. I also know that Mike has had a conversation with Seaside Council member Alexis, who, of course, is a staffer for Assembly Member Addis on the bill. Mike, is there anything you want to add to this?
Alexis just kind of said the same thing. A lot. I think cities were getting ready to oppose it. Uh, I did reach out to a farming entity. They had a lot of questions. They didn't take an opposed position. But I think some of the rub that people are feeling is the ability to set a fee or have a bond. And, how that gets determined has been a little bit awkward. Divide it equally among the 3 counties. Is one area of a county going to benefit versus another? So I thought there's a lot of logistics, I think, that still need to get worked out.
Yeah, and one of the things that was pointed out is that yes, we may the San Benito, Santa Cruz, and Monterey, be in partnership on a lot of issues. There are 45 to 60 active JPAs in the region, but they have different environmental needs. We may, what San Benito wants may not fly in Monterey County and vice versa. So there's just a lot of questions. I am hoping, given the call on Friday, that the author may want to park this bill. A lot of frustration that the cities were not brought into the discussion before introduction, nor were the counties. So it's there's again, I can't find a better word than ire around this issue.
Yeah,
So
and it's not really a district issue other than it will compete for resources.
Yes.
But
Dave, we've dealt with issues like this before with Senator Monning, where we try to delicately work ourselves out and maybe take a watch or neutral position. But this one obviously has risen to the level where people are.
Yeah, and please know, members, I'm not recommending a position for MPWMD to take. This is more for discussion. I know you guys are local leaders and just for the purposes of education, of knowing that this is going on, in the legislature and in our backyard. So.
Definitely.
Let me just jump in there. Understanding that, why would we be comfortable with the money leaving this bond money? We're competing for bond money. Why would we be comfortable with the bond money going to somewhere else? Well, if we have limited funds, why would we, as a district, be comfortable with that?
Yeah, we're not.
Okay. That's what I understand. It's not really in our backyard, but the object
Yeah,
is, the money is coming from Monterey County, coming from the bigger cities in Monterey County, which this district does represent. So
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out there. I understand the concept, and so we don't need to go into it further, but it's a little bit more than just it's not directly water, so it's not one of our concerns.
yeah, it does directly and indirectly affect the district. I think what I am recommending is that there is a coalition that is going to oppose this. And rather than um, I would say expend any political chits. It is a sensitive issue that, Assemblymember Addis is our assembly member. Sometimes it's not a good look, and that's where you've seen some entities holding off. However, I think that time has passed, and my recommendation is let the league and the cities take the weight on this bill, but watch it very, very carefully.
No, I understand that, and I'm one of the ones leading the charge against it.
Hmm.
And Assembly Member Addis should have checked in with her cities and other folks before she signed on to this.
Yeah,
And
you sure didn't hear much about this up here, did you?
you didn't hear about it anywhere. The cities didn't
No.
hear about it, and so we'll move on. I understand the recommendation, but I'll just add this. That's the same concept that they're using in, I think, Santa Cruz. They don't want to ruffle the feathers of their local
Exactly.
assembly members, so no one in Santa Cruz wants to stand up.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the county is sponsoring a measure, SB 1048 by Assembly Member or Senator Laird, that is to increase their taxes past the 2%, past the max 2%. So, Santa Cruz is in a precarious position as well as Monterey. The cities, on the other hand, um, I am very pleased to see them stepping up to the plate. And I've, been ringing the bell not only with your city mayor, which they've been very responsive, but with the other regional ones in the area. So, but again, this is for education. We'll be watching this closely and let you know any developments that happen within the next couple weeks.
all right, thank you.
Are there any other
I have a
questions?
Yeah, a couple of hands are up.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in. So what's the impetus behind this? Who are the interest groups pushing this? And is there a specific project they have in mind that they want funding for?
Um, we're looking at let's see. This is sponsored by the Trust for Public Land. This is basically a partnership with a lot of the environmentalists as well as some of the local tribes. Um, there's really so far the only opposition is the Forestry Association with Big Creek Lumber Company coming in with concerns. So this is going to really kind of hit them upside the face when you see, a litany of cities within the region of saying, no, this is not going to work for us. As far as a specific project, I do not believe that there are any. This is something she tried to do last year, but it just did not make it. It was probably more, it was a bigger, adding more counties in there. It was too much, and it didn't even make it past the second house. So this time she's cutting it down, and it does have legs. It is on the assembly floor, but I think it's going to face some stiff concerns and opposition and an uphill battle in the Senate. So it'll be interesting where Senator Laird's going to come on this. And so again, with the cities, they're working on educating him as well to help talk some sense and stop this.
But it definitely started with Pellerin, who's, she's Santa Cruz. And if you think about the Paula Corona Park or the Rancho Cañada Golf Course acquisition, that was a trust for public land acquisition originally.
Mhm.
So there's probably some one idea they had up in Santa Cruz, and then they said, well, gee, we could print this model for all three counties. You know, all three counties are members of AMBAG together, and so there's been a lot of the tri-county interaction. So, but yeah, somebody was scheming something, and of course, Addis is a strong environmentalist as well.
Yeah,
can I add in there? I mean, we just move on, but what I want to do add is, correct me if I'm correct, if I'm wrong, but add, you know, and I love my assembly member, right? But what is it? San Luis Obispo County, which he represents, is not included in this. That's the first thing. It's just Monterey County, right?
Yep.
And then, if my understanding is correct, if it's a bond for this district, the majority of the payees to that bond is from the peninsula.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And then the possibility is the money is going to be equally split. So it's a possibility the money will just as much go to the two other counties than it would from Monterey County, let alone the district.
Correct. That's what I was saying. That's why San Benito County is the only local government that is supporting it, as they should. The tax base, they have equal access to the money with a very significantly less tax base, and they have more land.
And my only thing is for the board, and then the people that gets to vote on where that money goes through, only 3 people from Monterey County sits on that board. Is that correct?
Yes, and that is one of the issues I know that was raised in the with Monterey County and Santa Cruz, is that it's not a weighted board. So why does San Benito have just as equal access on a vote when more of the tax dollars and the tax base are coming from, as you said, Mayor, from Santa Cruz and Monterey? So there's a lot of issues on this. Not only that there is tax fatigue, we don't know where this money is going through. We don't have equal representation. So again, you know, this bill has we have serious concerns on it.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair Oglesby, for that. That's helpful what you explained. Yeah.
Yeah, no, my only question was Pellerin was from Santa Cruz, and that got clarified. Yeah. I also appreciate the mayor's comments about how it parallels the Senate. I mean, the U.S. Senate, how you're voted, you get a vote by your agency size, at your agency designation, not by your size or anything else, not by population. Anyway, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the essence of time, again, your legislative track is attached. And I want to thank Dave and Mike for whittling down, 90 bills to something digestible and conservative. But again, it's election year. There's nothing mind-blowing going on in the water world, except our amazing bill that we're running and the one that we just.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll go to the initiatives. John, do you want to start it off?
Could I ask a question? Just the local revenue tax limitation measure. Does that have a chance of passing?
What bill is that?
God. See, I'm not sure, but there's in your
Water district compensation, open transparent.
let's see. In your memo.
Number 3.
Yeah, number 3.
Oh, we're going to the initiative. Okay, sorry.
The Howard Jarvis sponsor the tax revenue limitation measure.
Yeah. So we'll cover that right now as we go through the initiatives.
And let's try to wrap it in about 6 minutes.
Okay, we'll make it very quick. So the first one, the voter ID, that's been a issue that has been talked about quite a bit at the federal level and with the administration and so forth. They did try things through the legislature, through Congress, and were unsuccessful. So it's been shifted down to many of the states. In California, got theirs qualified, the voter ID requirement. So that will be on the ballot this coming November, and it's a very controversial issue. The Building on Affordable California Act, that just picks up where things have been moving with the legislature over the last several years, trying to deal with streamlining the process for building houses in particular, either through limiting things with CEQA or other issues that are relevant. This one takes the litigation issue and tries to narrow that one down so that you know, as you see in your area, it is often the case where that holds up a project or just kills a project for many years in the process. So this tries to limit that process as far as when litigation can be introduced and how long they have to process it. On the local revenue tax limitations, again, this is an issue that's been bouncing back and forth just about every election time, where for some time, it's required for tax measures, the three-quarter requirement of the voters of those voting. I believe it was this last year or the year before, where they actually were successful. They being those that were trying to bring the threshold down to 50 plus one. So this is an attempt to raise that bar again for tax measures. Local government is obviously very supportive of the 50 plus one. The business community is not, so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, and really quick, John, to interrupt, to answer Karen's question, the likelihood of this to pass, unfortunately, on an off year, it depends on voter turnout, not so much about the policy. Voters usually like taxpayer protection arguments or how it's framed. However, but the local governments, public safety, water agencies are mounting a very costly and aggressive opposition to this. So my assessment would be that it does not pass. Howard Jarvis, while they are a wonderful organization of protecting taxpayers, they do not have the funds to really run an aggressive initiative.
Thank
Is
you.
it qualified?
Yes, it has qualified.
Okay.
And then we'll go real quick. Likely to qualify is the bill. We've all heard about it. It's the wealth tax measure. You have a lot, even the governor and many of the Democratic leaders are against this, that it is not popular, that this is not the way to backfill healthcare funds. And this is where the money would go to. So and like the initiative process, which it's like a parallel legislature. If you can't get through the legislature, just put it on the ballot and pay for signatures and whatnot. So then you have a lot of the wealthy, they're putting a counter tax limitation measure that this can never happen again. So it's kind of the initiative process. We're going to put a pro and then we're going to put against, and we'll just confuse the voters and they'll all die. So that is likely to qualify. It is in the Attorney General's office, or with basically the confirming all the signatures at this point. So that's where that one is. And again, there's some ones that are floating around that have the high signature probability regarding campaign financing. Again, countermeasures on the initiative thresholds, and that's looking at raising the signature requirements, because as we're seeing, this is now a professional thing. I think none of us have been to a grocery store where we have not been hit up in the last couple months to look at these for our signatures. So I think that was 5 minutes, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike and I have another meeting to get to. But all very good information.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you all.
Anyone else before we? Okay, I'll leave it to the chair to close the meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, very well done. A lot of information in a short amount of time. I don't see any questions or other hands. Thank you so much, Dave, for getting us this information. I look forward to our next meeting. If there's no other questions, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Sacramento and DC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.